My name is Silas, and I'm going to tell you the truth about the day I decided to stop dying. For 38 years, I was a ghost in a gray suit. I was an actuary. I spent my life calculating the risks of other people's deaths. I sat in a climate-controlled office, staring at spreadsheets, predicting exactly when strangers would draw their last breath. I was good at it. I was the expert. I had the corner office with a view of the city I never actually walked through. But when I turned 60, I looked at one of my own charts. I calculated my own probability, and I realized that according to the data, I had already lived the useful part of my life. The chart said I was supposed to wind down. It said I was supposed to trade my ambition for a hobby and my drive for a lawn chair. That night, I sat in my driveway for 2 hours. The engine was cooling, making that clicking sound, and I realized I was just like that car. I was ticking away, losing heat, waiting to be put in the garage for good. I looked at my reflection in the rearview mirror. I didn't recognize the man looking back. He looked safe. He looked comfortable. He looked bored to tears. I realized then that I had been riding the wrong bus for nearly 4 decades. I had spent my youth and my middle age building a life that looked great on paper, but felt like a funeral in my soul. So, I did something that made everyone think I'd lost my mind. I didn't give a 2-week notice. I didn't wait for the gold watch. I walked into the chairman's office on a Tuesday morning, laid my building ID on his desk, and walked out. My wife, Sarah, looked at me like I had grown a second head. Silas, you have a pension. You have medical. You have respect. You're 60 years old. What are you going to do? Become a teenager again? I told her no. I'm going to become a beginner. I took a chunk of my savings, money I was told I shouldn't touch until I was 70, and I bought an old, rusted-out shipyard on the coast of Maine. I didn't know the first thing about boats. I knew how to calculate the risk of a hull breach, but I didn't know how to weld a seam or set a mast. I was 61 years old, and I was the dumbest person on the docks. I'd walk into the local supply shops, and the young guys, the ones with calloused hands and salt-stained shirts, they'd look at my soft, office worker hands and smirk. They called me the professor. They waited for me to quit. They waited for the first winter to break my spirit and send me back to my spreadsheets. And for a while, I thought they were right. My first winter in the shipyard was a nightmare. The pipes froze. The roof of the shed leaked. I spent 6 months trying to restore a wooden dory, and when I finally put it in the water, it sank in 12 minutes. I sat on the dock, soaked to the bone in freezing Atlantic water, and I cried. I cried because I was embarrassed. I cried because my ego was bruised. I cried because I realized that being an expert in my old life meant absolutely nothing in this one. But then I looked at the water. I realized that even though I had failed, I was awake. My heart was pounding. My muscles were sore. I wasn't staring at a screen. I was fighting the elements. I went back to the shop. I walked up to a 24-year-old kid named Caleb who had been building boats since he could walk. I killed my pride. I looked him in the eye and I said, "Caleb, I'm a fool. I don't know what I'm doing. Show me how to seal the wood. Please." That was the moment Silas, the actuary, died, and Silas, the boat builder, was born. For the next 20 years, from the time I was 62 until I hit 82, I lived an entire second lifetime. I didn't have the raw energy I had at 20, but I had something better. I had the patience of a man who knew how time worked. I had the discipline to stay in the shop until the job was done right. I became a sniper with a chisel. I learned the language of oak and cedar. By the time I was 70, people weren't smirking anymore. They were coming from 3 states away to ask me to build their boats. They wanted a Silas original because they knew I didn't waste a single movement. I lived more in those 20 years by the sea than I did in the 40 years in that office. I'm 92 now. My hands are gnarled, and they've got scars from slip-ups with the blade, but they're my hands. They aren't the hands of a ghost anymore. I look back at the man I was at 60, and I want to reach through time and shake him. I want to tell him, don't you dare sit down. Don't you dare think the show is over. If you're 60 right now, listen to me. You think you're old? I've lived an entire human existence, from infancy to adulthood, in the time I've had since I was your age. You're worried about what people will think. They aren't thinking about you. They're too busy being scared of their own shadows. You're worried about failing? Good. Failure is how you know you're still in the game. Rotting in a recliner. That's the only real failure there is. I'm at the end of my day now. The sun is dipping below the horizon, and I can hear the tide coming in. But I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid because I didn't leave any life on the table. I used it all. I burned every ounce of fuel I had. You still have a full tank. What are you going to do with it? Are you going to keep riding that bus to a city you hate? Or are you going to pull the cord, get out in the mud, and start building something that matters? The clock is ticking. Can you hear it? That's not the sound of your life ending. That's the sound of your second life waiting to begin. Get up. Get to the shop. There's work to be done.